Good morning. This is Low Code Campfire, October 8th, 2021. We are going to talk about some Campfire contributions today, but this is our 22nd episode. Low Code Campfire is every Friday meeting. We get together to talk about techniques, challenges, experiences, and I just think that between the feedback and the participation that it only gets better and better. So glad that you're with us. In our past editions are all on YouTube, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, but we try and take good notes and make this be searchable, and if you want to come back to particular topics. We get together, we talk about, anybody new, say hi, please, but then we talk around the campfire, techniques, challenges, experiences, and since this is a meeting format, we just jump in and say hi. If you got noise going on behind you, please mute. I haven't had to actually use this, but I do encourage participation, or I will sing. If you have questions or topics to address, that link is in the email that I sent. It's also this QR code will get you there. I have gotten a couple of feedback items, questions, topics, and those have been put to the front of the agenda for today. So let's see, anyone new to the group today? I hate to call you out, Peter. I don't know if you've been to I know you're a long time user of the software. I don't think I've said hi to you before. Okay, all right. Text, he says yes, he has. So great. Cool. Anyone else want to say hi, or is it just going to be me today?
Hello, everybody. Mark here.
Hi, everyone. Ben here.
Love to see the usual crowd. Hello, Jim. I think based on Bogdan's pleading last week, we got to our 10th Capterra review, but there's still a chance to do a Capterra review, and I think you get $20 out of it as well. So, I mean, how good can that be? First call, what's going on? What's on your mind? Like I say, I've got several things on the agenda, especially for I think it's people that are showed up. So we'll have good stuff to talk about, but I didn't want to jump in, give you a chance to jump in early.
Thanks, Dale. I've been hitting you pretty hard in the community forum already this week, so I think I'm good.
No.
I was going to say something similar. My only pressing matter right now is execution time for SQL statements. I don't know if anyone else has ever encountered issues with that, with their selects taking too long to return data.
So
is that your timeout question, Ben?
Yes, it is.
So it sounds like you're dealing with a large data and or a complex query. I had posted the possibility of tuning. Have you already done some work in that area?
I have been banging my head for 3 days tuning, and I, reclaim a couple of seconds here and there. Right now I'm trying to rebuild my entire huge script. I'm not even done yet, but I'm hitting 32 seconds so far in being able to pull the data back, because it's pulling from Oracle as well as another SQL server. So there's a lot of data being pushed through here.
Does it have to be real time? Could you load a table or?
What I'm trying to do just to speed things up, I initially thought send the Oracle a really complex statement. I was using common table expressions, but when you do that, you basically, as you're compounding further down the CTE your foregoing indexes. So it was actually initially taking about 5 minutes to return the data. So what I've opted to do instead is I'm actually pulling out the data from Oracle in chunks, throwing it into table variables, creating indexes on those table variables, and then doing all of the inner joining and data massaging locally, which has sped things up significantly, but it's just making for a really wieldy and complex script.
Yeah. So,
And is it the Oracle side of your process that's having the problem, or that where the delay is, or in the SQL Server side?
Right now, my biggest delay, and again, this is I'm rewriting it, so I'm up to the fourth Oracle table. Fourth Oracle table is taking about 19 to 20 seconds to return data, and it's a relatively simple SQL statement. So I'm trying to see if I can somehow tweak it so that Oracle responds quicker, but I still have more tables to pull. So this is only going to get, more time as I start adding more stuff to it.
Did you investigate the indexes on the Oracle table?
I haven't gone that far. I'm not the one that covers the Oracle side of it. I'd have to speak with our Oracle database manager here, but I'm trying my best to keep all of my joins to obviously specifically indexed fields, key fields and whatnot to, improve speed. Other than that, until I speak with that other person, I don't know what more I can really do with some of these statements.
so Bogdan.
Sorry, didn't mean to hijack.
No. I think, this really is a good one. It's so as asking the question about indexes and things, but at a core level, it makes sense to me to be able to specify timeout if you're willing to wait for it. If that's the only answer, then specifying timeout sounds like a reasonable thing. So I was just wondering if Bogdan had any comment on that. He may have stepped away for a second. So, and
about the SQL, sorry, you mentioned my name. Hello, everyone.
yes, hello, yeah. Are you following along with the question? SQL timeout.
I heard this conversation now with a long query. I mean, what I've seen other companies do in the past is shadowing the data. So having like a job that runs every 1 minute, brings new records and puts them in a, let's say, a shadow table, a local copy of the Oracle database. So then it queries locally and moves very fast. So I've seen quite a few companies do that, including other databases like Dynamic CRM, which is known to be slow, and especially if you want to do complex stuff. And I heard this process of let's bring it all locally, and then we query it from the local storage. And then I heard the same about evoke instances, the structured content that is a very complicated model. It's not a plain database, and it lives somewhere in the cloud. And same, I heard customers that they implemented scheduled jobs to bring all the content also in real SQL tables, and then they were building their views, their grids, and based on that. Not sure if it's a solution.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of doing that in the sense that my script is bringing the data chunks in, putting them into table variables, and then massaging the data that way. But as for bringing the data long-term and storing it, unfortunately, due to restrictions that we have here for security purposes, that's not an option.
Got it.
Instead of a table variable, what about a physical temp table? Do you need any performance difference?
I haven't tried it, but I honestly, I don't think there's really going to be that big of a performance difference. I mean, I can try it, but typically I try to keep within table variables. They're just sometimes a little bit easier to deal with, and you know, once the scope is done, they're all gone.
I have an Oracle database where I'm pulling a data warehouse, and I have in the past had to use a physical temp table and put it out into that temp table in chunks and to get it to return fast. Whether that works in your schema, I don't know.
Ben, I used to work with a software called Cognos quite a few years ago, and you're
That's what
familiar
I'm
with that?
working with, IBM Cognos,
Aha.
ReportNet. This
Well-
is where I'm getting my data from.
Well, then you know that they at least used to have, did this quite a few years ago, Ben, but they used to be able to develop, I think they called them cubes, which was predefined collections of data that were already processed and then stored that way. Yeah, well, if you already know about it, then it seems to me like if you could
I
do
mean,
that.
I haven't really played directly on the Cognos side. You know, I'm just basically using the tables that are already there through, I mean, we're using ReportNet, so that's eScholar. Whatever design that they've created with regards to the tables and whatnot, I'm just pulling the data directly. I'm not manipulating on there. And in other words, I have read-only access. If it gets to the point where that's necessary, you know, we might look into that. But for the time being, because we do use Cognos for its own reporting, the thing is that they want me to try to design reports in DNN using the tools that we have to kind of give them a little bit more insight to the data that the IBM Cognos reporting doesn't make very easy to do. And then on top of that, sometimes I'll pull data, which then, depending on what the results are, will kick off other things like email alerts and things of that nature. That's stuff that, you know, Cognos just cannot do. So this is one of the reasons why I'm trying to do it through this software. But the problem is there's just so much unwieldy data that trying to tweak those statements to bring the data back quickly is just becoming such a pain and a pain. Leave it at that.
Yeah, I get you. But if it comes to it, I still think the cube is a good idea. If you know, if it comes to that point, because querying the cube with SQL Server is going to be a lot faster than querying the underlying data because it's already crunched and put together in queryable fashion. It's like it's prepared for your queries with a bunch of underlying joins and all already taken care of. I think a lot of the data is duplicated in order to be pre-joined, but as a result, you get a big block of data that you can query however you like. And it's a lot faster because a lot of that calculation is already done. So there's a thought.
Thanks, Mark. I'll definitely keep that in mind.
So this is the part that I like about Campfire. I mean, I have zero experience with Oracle, other than trying to help around the edges with connection strings and things like that. So the fact that we've got at least 4 people on the call that have, that's very cool. Okay. Yeah, sorry, it wasn't just a do this kind of an answer, Ben, but here we go.
I still would like an ability to designate a timeout. Just saying.
I can confirm it's on the list. I can't say when it might happen. So
Could that possibly be a SQL Server setting or an IIS setting?
No, it's speaking from someone who's actually written like .NET code that actually sends out to a SQL server. It's actually part of the command that you send out to the server. It basically lets the local machine know how long it's willing to wait for a response. There is a default that SQL does. So if you don't give it a timeout, it will just use the default timeout, but you can override that, but DNN Sharp would need to give us the option. So like if you've seen in the action to run a SQL statement, there's an actual option that says SQL timeout. you can override it. But then like load entities doesn't have that. Action grids don't have that in the data source ability when you select either SQL statement or advanced. So without those overrides, it's just going to use whatever the programming is defaulted to. So that's where the problem comes in. You have no way of extending it if you know your statement is going to take longer than that default time.
Got it. So I understand, Ben, that your problem is that it's not the query. I mean, that's something you can live with, but having the option to make it work in the product. Got it.
Right.
Got it. Yeah. I will take note.
How would we, on a regular basis, like Ben's issue right here, how would we request a product feature like that?
I guess that's something that we want. I mean, of course, the community forum is where it's happening nowadays. Dels makes a wonderful job at identifying these feature requests and bringing it up in a weekly meeting that we have with the support team. But going forward, we want to be like a feature request forum on the community portal. So that will be the nice way to do it.
So for the short term, you can, I mean, putting those in console cases or on the forum, I do pick them up. I mean, we do move them forward, but long term, we'll. I mean, we're talking ongoing about a way to get those onto the community forum, and part of that is just making sure that those get managed. How much. If we put something out, we want to make sure that we're actually doing something with them. So cool. I'm going to move over to Campfire Contributions for a minute. This is the thing that we started a couple of weeks ago, and then I took a week off, but I set it up kind of quickly, a Plant an App application. If you're part of Campfire and you want access to this you can, and you don't yet have it, you can drop me the email that you want to get access into the chat, and I will pick it up and send you an invitation. But this answers the question of, this is our attempt to answer the question of, can we set up things that we can share and you can actually see the code working and perhaps download it, that kind of thing. Because we demonstrate a lot of techniques, but then we don't, I mean, if you follow along on videos, you can get in the same place, but sometimes it's helpful just to see something working. So I started out with, I think, dynamic grid because I had just demonstrated that. And then Ben has added, I need to add the name here to this, make sure that we can see who's contributing, but Ben has added some things and I've added some things. And so we're starting a library of things that you can look at to see how they're done and perhaps just pick them up and use them. I just wanted to cover, if you want to contribute, cover how that works. First of all, I'd advise you to take a look at the guidelines, because this is, I mean, I wanted to cover the legal stuff, but just, this is unlicensed, right? You can, if you're contributing it, you're assuming that anybody can use it and modify it. And there's a little blurb here explaining what that is, but don't contribute anything that you're just not giving away. At this point, we're just sharing core things. If you want to contribute, you'll get low-code engineer rights onto the system. The idea would be that you would create a page for yourself, and for each contribution that you have, just create a page that describes it, a page that holds the content, and then when you have it ready to go, when it works, when you want to explain to people, when you want to make it available, come to this contributions page. It's on the main page. You can enter a new item and it prompts for the name of the thing, the description of the thing, and then paste the link to your page. So for example, with a token utility StringContains that Ben contributed 2 tokens that show how to check for contains, either one using SQL, one using VB. They both kind of do the same thing. You can go to that page and it opens up and explains exactly how to use it. He's provided a nice demonstration form to say, to show how it works. So for example, in this case, we're using the SQL version of this token to say, does item 3 exist in the list? And you click it and it says true. If we look for items 6 in the list, you get false. So just a nice, easy way to see if one thing is contained in another list. And so they've got a nice explanation of where to go. It's on the tokens page in the Ben namespace, and there's these 2 things. So you could go and pick it up and import them into your own projects if you want to. So that's the idea, that these useful things, hopefully either reusable or that demonstrate a technique that you can bring into your projects. That's the idea behind them. I have made there's a ability to comment on these, the contribution comments. And so if we were to look in on that, we can see that you can just add a comment to this thing, and anybody who has participated in the comments will get an email about that. I'm going to set up some kind of a following thing so that you can either follow all contributions or follow particular contributions. Haven't gotten there yet. But first of all, does this make sense? Second of all, immediate feedback, anything that you feel like we need or agree?
Well, I want to be quick to say outstanding. I'm really happy that this is going on. I will be participating very soon myself. And thank you for Ben starting us off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I barely got it in, and he had.
One of the things that I've got something I'd like to contribute, but the first thing I've got to do is basically clean it up to make it ready for the audience, so to speak, because it's got some proprietary information in there, tables that may not exist. So there's work to be done to get it to get it ready to share. But this is great, and I very much appreciate it.
Well, I find the same thing, Matt, that I've got some things that are worth sharing, but when you I don't know, you have to kind of bring them, you have to invest a little effort in. You can't just dump them in there, and actually building a page that explains and whatever. It does take a commitment to do it, and from my perspective, the primary benefit is that other people will do it too, and you just have to trust that you're going to get more out of it than you're putting in. That is a thing.
I will say thank you for adding the contributions comment portion to that came in later, because I was like, that's a great way for us to kind of to contribute comment wise, like what Matt had suggested with regards to updating that utility for the StringContains.
Oh.
If that comment was there prior, he could have responded that way, and then instead of having to be offloaded on emails.
And that does remind me of another thing that I didn't mention, but the idea here, I mean, we're going to be good citizens here, meaning I'm going to work on, we all have rights to this system. I'm going to work on my stuff. If you've got something that you want to see different, just put it in the comments, suggest it, or maybe I'll say, yeah, please go ahead and make that change, but just kind of respect some boundaries so that we don't get into a goofy area.
Agreed.
Is there anything that, other than some notification stuff, letting you say, I want to hear about everything or follow this particular thing? Is there any structural thing you'd like to see part of this?
Actually, touching on what you just said, I had an idea, but I think you may have covered it in, or you're planning on to. For argument's sake, the item 3, ID 3, that one's gone through different iterations, versionings. It would be nice if we had the ability to, like with the community, mark that we want to follow this and be notified of changes or something like that, and then somehow set it up so that if someone makes a change and is posting, for argument's sake, a new version, that maybe that person, the contributor, can click a button to say like notify everyone or something to that effect. I know it's not going to be automatic because we're building forms, but if the contributor has the ability to forcibly notify everyone who marked that they want to be updated on changes, that would be a kind of neat feature.
So yeah, for my gut reaction to that is, for simplicity's sake, if we make the commenting make sense, that you can follow along in the commenting, then we can just agree to put, okay, a new version exists kind of thing into the comments, and not have to build something particularly.
So if we wanted to hear that Ben put out a new version, we would first make a comment, something that would get us into the list, right?
Right. For now, the mechanism is if you make a comment, and you could just say following or whatever. But my thought is that I'll put some kind of a button so that you can be added to the list of a particular thing, or to everything. Would you want to be notified when new contributions get added? Or do you just want to look for them when you're looking for them?
I'd like to know when they're added.
So I'll add a little bit more to this, and the other thing is I've put this out here, but everybody's a low-code engineer, and if anybody wants to take on any of those particular things, I'm okay with that. I don't. This is going to be for Campfire and by Campfire. Great. So looking at particular contributions so far, I mean, along the way, I'll try and also highlight things that are new. So we got 5 things, not a big deal here. Dynamic grid, this was the ability to display different fields in a grid based on selections. And so, we have, if I want first name and last name out of the thing, I get first name, last name. And this is, if I want to also include username, then it's also added. So the whole technique for this, and this was based on Ben's idea, it's all there and demonstrated so you can see it, and then you can go in and see how it works. So that's the one contribution. I showed Ben's StringContains. There were 2 versions, and there's also a strict or a whether or not it's strict. So near matches can work. There's, I think, depending on which one, probably want to test. I think depending on which one you use, one might enforce case versus the other doesn't enforce case, things like that. So you can, let's see, if we use the SQL version and say item 3, it's true. Once we go to the VB version,
there's no case. That was one thing I wanted to mention. I noticed that the default value that's given to a field, if it's on a bind, so it hides or shows based off bind, it will erase the default value. It won't put it back in.
okay, I wasn't aware of that. I'll take a look at that when I get around to doing the recording. We'll pay attention to that one.
Say, Ben, I wonder if it would be there all the time if you check the box to save to report. I think I've seen something like that improving the situation.
Yeah, the only thing is I'm not saving anything. I don't want to save this data into a table or anything. This is just run live and just see info.
Right. But I think that it makes the value available to the form while it's open.
So this next one is a little JavaScript to reclaim some screen space. This was also a Ben contribution. And so it shows up, I've implemented it here on Campfire system, but it adds this button, show default properties. And so all the properties that we don't we often don't care about get hidden, but you can click and get to see them. So this is the default view that you would get from Plant an App. And with this JavaScript in place, this is the default view you get, just focusing on your properties. So that's a cool little one. Touch signature. This is a demonstration that I needed for a client. And so it shows how to do a signature, and that when it's complete, it puts it onto a PDF that you get to take a look at. And so that whole technique of just using touch signature is demonstrated. And then the last one about manipulating entities was one that I demonstrated recently that just shows about how to manipulate columns in so this is loading up an entity with information, and then you can get, and if you follow along, you can see the different way that this, like for example, this original rank column is a duplicate, and then this was a change to value. So just kind of showing how you can manipulate entities, and so you can follow along with that. And also it uses remap entity list, so you can completely change convert an entity from one structure to another, rename columns, get different columns as part of it. So those are the contributions we have so far. And when you add one, I'm gonna highlight it in Campfire, because that's what we're doing. Final thoughts on Campfire and contributions. Anybody not part of it that wants to be part of it? I think a lot of these pages will be visible, but not accessible unless you're part of Campfire. All right.
So yeah, Dale, what about the community of clients of Plant an App and/or action forms that are not in Campfire now? I was just wondering if there could be, I think it would be to your advantage to somehow make a list of solutions maybe that are in here available publicly, and that would be, once people find that, they would be enticed to join the Campfire, at least, so they could get in and have access to it.
I'm sorry, so you're suggesting going back to things that we've done in the past and adding them in, is that?
Well, not necessarily. No, I'm thinking of making the list of solutions publicly visible so that people could find them. And then once they found them, they get the message saying, well, you need to be in Campfire in order to log in and see how it's done.
Yep. And let's see, I did, and this is really, okay, so now we're on to another point of testing incognito these things, but like the pages, oops, I don't know my own system here. But this functionality is, I'm sorry, it's worth testing incognito, and the functionality is visible at this point, and the list is visible incognito. So, yeah, we don't say anything. We don't provide a map on how to get in, but that's a good point. So I'll take that under advisement.
Yeah, I think also this is really great stuff, and I think part of where Mark was going, maybe if like on the community itself, maybe every time there's something new. First of all, I think just let everybody know that it exists and give them a summary of this, and then when there is something new, post it to the community so that everybody knows, to Mark's point, and then help get traction for you guys here in Campfire, and as well as the Low Code Cafe.
Perfect. That's a great suggestion. Get some traction from the effort that we're all putting in. Absolutely, and I appreciate the attitude of trying to advance Plant an App. I mean, you know, my goal with Campfire was to have a deeper conversation and provide a way for us to help each other. And you know, I appreciate the spirit of you're trying to help us as well.
You know, it helps us too, Dale. You know, even if we as individuals were not part of the Campfire, we're still working with the software, and we're still looking for ways to get things done. And so, yeah, it's going to help everybody who gets a hold of it.
Good deal. Well, so here we are, five contributions in. Let's see where we can take it. And from my perspective, as I work up things for the presentations, like in the cafe, you know, I doing that with an idea towards making it good enough to put here too, so that you can use it rather than just demonstrating it. So, all right. So that's Campfire Contributions. What else do we got? Matt, a couple of weeks ago, you had suggested this title, Entities, and Mysterious but Helpful Entities. I've covered some stuff in Entities, but it'd be interesting to see if what we've covered recently touched on your need or question, and where we could go better or more with that.
Well, yes, definitely what you've covered already was very helpful. So I really appreciate that. One of the things that's interesting about these entities is you never get to actually see them. Like, it would be interesting to be able to have, for instance, an action grid where you could display this entity so you can see it as it's working. Just a thought. I don't know, you know, whether that has any real merit. Maybe it's just because I'm, you know, a newbie in that respect. But yeah, and then also almost an idea of when to use them. Like, I asked the question, I was going to use a SQL temp table, if I recall. And I think that was part of the genesis of the conversation, using an entity instead. So maybe a little bit about best practices, or when to use them, when not to use them, things like that. And again, you may have covered some or all of this, but those were just some of my thoughts.
So I think I can do some more with that, and particularly about you know, revealing the content of entities. It'd be interesting to see if there's a good way to do that. I smiled when you were talking about that, because there was, I think, another question here. This one came in a while back, talking about how to get data values as they're changed in the workflow. I think this was a conversation we got into with Mark a few weeks ago. And I actually took on creating a custom action called get tokens JSON to be able to return everything that's in the context and see what it is. I don't think it I don't think it would return back all the contents of entities, and so that might be another thing that we would do. But I did get this one done, or not good enough to put into to Campfire yet, but I did have it good enough to show if anyone was interested. And I already have ideas about what more I can do with it. So if it is anyone interested in seeing that custom action?
Oh yeah, I am, Dale. Yep.
Always interested. I have one
Yes, sir.
side comment, and I don't know if anyone else agrees with me. Maybe I'm just being too picky. But I have a suggestion, a potential suggestion. In the plant in app menu structure, you're calling the creation of tables entities, but you guys have already used that terminology for your actions. And when we're trying to explain it to other people or things like that, and we start talking about entities, now we have to have the added layer of explaining, I'm not talking about plant and app table entities, I'm talking about DNN sharp action entities. Because those actions existed first, is it possible to rename entities in plant and app to like tables? Just make it a little clearer?
So we've certainly seen, like on your one of your recent community contributions, you had a question about entities, and you said not plant and app entities. You were very clear about trying. So we definitely picked up that we have an issue with naming. I see. Bogdan, did you want to comment?
Yeah. We just were discussing this with Dale and other people in the team this week. There are some ideas circulated, not changing the plant and app entities, but changing the actions to maybe list. So load list, and then you can load a list from SQL. You can load a list from other sources that we have today, but you can also load a list from an entity. And that's we also have to bridge the gap. Because now you have entities, but you have no way to get them unless you're writing SQL. So then maybe we'll call this, other ideas that were circulated was to call them temporary entities or in-memory entities when you use the actions, because they only exist for the duration of the execution.
Why don't you call them objects?
Yeah, objects and lists. That's why if you are loading a single one, call it object. And then if you are loading multiple, we call it a list, which seems like the standard in other software.
Yes, because entity is sort of a class.
So, Ben, to your point, we certainly have noticed that we have some cleanup to do, and we are paying
I often like to use the term contextual entity, in the meantime until we make some sort of change. But I like the term contextual entity since we have the two things with the same name. So when I'm talking about an entity where you're loading data in an action or something like that, I like to refer to it as a contextual entity when I'm talking with clients.
And contextual kind of gives it a short lifespan.
Yeah.
Nuance to it.
Maybe scoped as well as a
entity.
I don't know. Personally, it's like just having two things even remotely with the same name entity for me kind of makes my eye twitch a little. I'd prefer to see the names be completely separated, even with the nuanced changes of saying contextual or scoped or anything like that. I think just the fact that they both have the word entity in it tends to potentially cause confusion.
Yeah, I agree with Ben.
If there's a vote, I like lists because it's easier to explain to my client.
And I'm reasonably certain that if we renamed the actions from load entity SQL to load list SQL, that they still get this, they would still have the same internal ID. And so after you apply that upgrade, it would open up, you'd look at your actions and it would say load entity list. We wouldn't have two things. It would just, its name would change. Would that make you guys crazy if we just kind of automatically change the name of the action?
Not crazy.
No,
We would just need to
a little
let
bit
you-
of a learning curve, but wouldn't be terrible.
Yeah, it would save the, you know, it would. And the good side is it would save all the effort. It was just that, you know, you wouldn't have to like change your action or whatever. But on the downside, you would have to come in and say, you'd go and look at your action stack, and it would say load list JSON, for example. So
Yeah, that's fine.
all right. So here's the custom action that I created, and I'm using my old company website so that it's easier for me to access the back end and load VB and things like that. Or, excuse me, load Visual Studio. But what I did was I've got a table here called context logs, and I'll refresh this. I'm actually going to clear it out, but the idea here is that I'm going to take whatever's on the form and create entries for everything automatically. So if I put in Dale and hit submit, the actions behind the scenes are adding this content to the context log. So everything that was created in context, which includes first name and my buttons and the validation errors, these were things that were just automatically created for us. If we go into the form and add things, if I were to add let's add a multiple choice with checkboxes, just take it as it comes. And so this is going to be, I'm going to call it choice 1 and save. Then when I fill this form in now, we'll just take the second item and submit that, refresh this. Got a different time code here. I did a time code so I could see one submit altogether, but got first name, we have MC1 with different value is true, the JSON array, the text, and the value. So everything that gets created in the context is just getting logged automatically. And so let's take a look at what the logic of the button is. The submit button is doing 2 things. I have this get tokens JSON. This is the custom action that I created, and it's taking everything that's in the context and putting it into a token called all tokens, and it's in a JSON format. And then I've built a workflow that processes that JSON and puts it into a table. And that's it. You know, we can look at the workflow a little bit, but one thing that probably you guys would see pretty easily, if I were to create a text field, no, it's not what I wanted to do. A static text and called it all tokens. So now instead of it being a hidden content, it's going to appear on the screen, and hit save. So it's now putting, because I'm setting all tokens to the value of what comes out of that get tokens JSON, it's showing on the screen. And so if we can beautify that, but what you're getting back is a bunch of name value pairs that that shows everything that's in the context. What do we think? So that's just, I've only dealt with on-screen fields here for a second, but if I go to my submit button, and if I were to do something with first name, for example, if I were to add a inject data that says, oh, I don't have a last name field yet, so that. This up a little bit. First name, last name. If we go look at the data that comes out, you know, the full name that got created appears too. And you could log this multiple times during a button if you're trying to. I mean, this isn't intended to be an ongoing, just leave it up and going kind of thing. But if you're trying to debug why did something happen, log the context before your complex thing, log the context after your complex thing, and then, or in the middle, and at least you get everything all at once. You don't have to say, well, but I want to follow this, and I want to follow that, and I want to follow that.
This also record hidden fields and
Yep.
basically anything that's on the form.
Yep. Anything that's in the context.
What's triggering it to do the record?
Yeah, so let's take a look at that. I built a workflow that says log context for user. It takes input, it takes in my reference code and all the JSON. So that JSON entity that all tokens that got returned, it's taking in as JSON. And so the main things that are going on is I'm loading it as an entities so that I can loop through it and then execute actions on entity list. I'm taking that entity and using, I just created an entity called context log. So I pass all the values, the name, the value, the reference, the user information, the time code, and it creates records. So
because you're passing JSON, actually, you could use this to also debug an API call or something that's returning a stack of data back to you and put that
right,
out.
The get tokens JSON, the custom action that I added, would be useful anywhere where there's context. So an API, a sharp scheduler, any action stack. So, yep. As much as anything, I kind of took this on. I mean, there was some discussion about it back several weeks ago, but I took it on as I really need to understand how to write a custom action, and so I did that. And so it kind of has it potentially is something that could be useful. And then the next thing that I was thinking is that, and I don't know whether this is a good idea. I'm still working my way through it, but when it creates this, I'm creating name value pairs. What I'm wondering too, though, is if it created the JSON a little bit differently, you could with names with just in true JSON name value kind of I don't know what the right the differently structured JSON. Let me stop there. That you could use the parse JSON into tokens, which would allow you to pass all of your context from a form into a workflow, for example. So while a workflow by definition is a separate context, if you needed a special workflow that had all your context, you could just pass all my variables in so you can do something with it. And so it would kind of break down that wall if you wanted it to be more of a, I don't want to say global context, but to be able to pass everything without having to specify everything. Anyway, that's kind of where I'm thinking.
A nice benefit there, Dale. Yeah.
Well, it could be. I'm still playing, but at least I learned how to write a custom action and get it into my tree. So even within the workflow, the log context for user, if you wanted to take a look at the context within that, you could add an action. But it's here in my created an MBI get tokens JSON, and it takes the whole context and puts it out into a token. One of the things that's also I found useful in this is the extra information that you get. So like here, our multiple choice created value, it created text, it created JSON array. I think the instructions probably tell you that it creates all these things, but this way you get to see exactly what gets created. I added this will be fun. Let's do one. If we add a file,
is that going to be your next low code video, Dale? Is the custom action?
I haven't committed. I'm not going to commit to that, but
Come on.
If we do single file upload one, I mean, there are several good videos about out there already, but the trick is, the trouble is knowing what to. I mean, once you have your project structured, knowing what you want to get done and access all that stuff. So, I mean, I could explain what I did, no problem, but I mean, it'd be anyway. So if we create a single file upload and add it here to it, notice that it says all the things that it says, I'm going to create all these tokens for you automatically. If we save this and refresh and pick a file to submit, doesn't matter, I'll pick this CSV file and submit. When we look at, and I'm going to search for 679 so that we only see the things that were just submitted here. But SFU1, we see it's got a base 64 and a folder ID and a folder path. So it's just kind of a nice way to be able to quickly see, hey, what are all these things that get created for me and what kind of values do they have, rather than having to throw them out into a message or a log or something. It's just, hey, here's everything.
Yeah, that's sweet.
So, okay. And so now I've monopolized all the time. We're coming up on our hour. Any last thoughts or thoughts for next time?
Dale, I'm not sure if you already brought it up, but we have a beta for 1.16.
I didn't bring it up.
Okay, then it's a good time to bring it up. So we have a beta for 1.16. It already passed through some internal Q&A. Starting Monday, we'll deploy it on our systems. So I think it's ready to pick it up if any wants to give it a try. I can actually, let me see, I can find the link and post it here in the chat. Okay, this is it. Plant an app, download. So this is the link. If anyone wants to give it a try, that would be most appreciated. Last week, we discussed a lot about the beta program that's still going on. It's not something we're abandoning. It's still some conversations are happening, designing the program. So we'll have it more official, but in the meantime, if anyone wants to step in and help, it's much appreciated.
Yep. So that's on my list for later this afternoon. For me, is I've got my things like Campfire and other smaller, less critical sites that I'm going to install this beta on. So you've got got one like that or ready to, or one that you can back up and give a try, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, and how do you want the feedback to come in from this?
Well, you're welcome to email it directly to me, but also if you want to do a community forum, okay, we're done. No reason not to.
I think for now, maybe let's not do. Let's use email. Let's email
Okay.
directly. I can be also in the email.
Well, and then in which case, I think if you don't have it, my email on the chat.
So if you install that, will the update function as patches are found link into the beta also, or would you just have to re-download and install an updated beta? Does that question make sense?
So if you install the beta, how do you get the final if there's a change?
Or if there's any patches in between, will those go through the?
Yeah, they will actually be available in the update screen. So you, after you install this one, you just click the update button and it brings the new versions. So I think they will be either in the hotfixes or maybe showing it will be better.
So once we get 116, if there's, I mean, you're going to install it using the link that Bogdan said, which would be using the extensions and install extension. But once you, if there are any updates, they'll come in the form of hot fixes, and yeah, it will. You would just be able to install them or install all.
Yep.
On the chat, I put both the support email and my personal. Support really is better because Bogdan is in on that list, and as well as the rest of support. So any and all of us will see that one, and that's a better one. If you want to hit me personally, you're welcome to do that too, but that provides less visibility. Cool. Great hour. Thank you all, and hopefully we'll see you all next week. Let's see, gotta find my closing screen here so we can put that on the YouTube. Okay, see you guys next week.
Everybody have a great week.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.